Hello everyone. Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all. I hope you are doing very well. It's been quite a while since we actually joined the last live session because um, you know uh, the last Friday was the International Mother Language Day, and during that day I decided not to conduct any live session in English because that was the International Mother Language Day. Just to pay tribute to our mother language and the language martyrs, I decided not to conduct any live session in English. So we meet after a 2-week gap. I hope you are very well. So today I'm going to conduct my live session on a topic of ELT and linguistics, that is principles of material selection. And it's a very handy topic. I hope the students of ELT and linguistics will be benefited out of this live session. So I welcome them all and I invite them all to join as early as possible. First of all, we have to know what material is. Our topic is principles of material selection. So we have to know what material is all about at the very outset. In one of my previous live session, I actually talked about materials. Material actually is anything that facilitates teaching and learning language according to ELT studies. Anything that facilitate teaching and learning language. Just like textbook, syllabus, audio-visual materials, even the projector used in the classroom, all these materials actually facilitate teaching and learning. So these are known as materials. Textbook is a material, syllabus is a material, projector, and even course outline, course profile, all these are materials. Anything that facilitates teaching and learning is known as the material according to ELT studies. Now, how to select those materials for language teaching, for English language teaching actually? What are the principles for it? We have to know all these things in details. So the first principle of material selection is English language teaching materials should be contextualized. I repeat, English language teaching materials should be contextualized. So different countries, different cultures have different contexts. Suppose in our country we have a very large classroom culture. We are a largely populated nation. So most of our classes are actually full of a huge number of students. So we have large classroom culture in our country. So the materials that are used in other countries might not be suitable for us because pair work or group work becomes very difficult from our context as we have large classroom culture. So the materials have to be designed accordingly. And even the cultural context of our country is different from other cultures as well. Suppose if I talk about English for Today, the textbook that was used in our country for teaching English language in the primary secondary level. So in that book we will find the characters are also taken from our country, like Jamal, Kamal, Rohim, all these names are used instead of Michael, George, because those textbooks have been contextualized and the scenarios, the surroundings, even the context, all these things actually are culture sensitive. That means which are part of our culture. And the second principle that I would like to talk about is English language teaching materials should stimulate interaction. I repeat, the second principle for material selection is English language teaching materials should stimulate interaction. That means communication, stimulate interaction or communication, because communication is the main thing. We have to go for the actual communication. Using language is more important than learning language, because if you learn a language but you are not able to use it, then actually your learning language will be hampered. I mean, practical use of language is very important nowadays, and for that reason English language teaching materials should stimulate interaction among the students or the learners. If it fails to do so, then those materials are not good materials or effective language teaching materials. Those are bad materials. So English language teaching materials should stimulate interaction among the students or the learners. This is the second principle. And now the third principle. Let us talk about the third principle of language teaching materials, that is developing language skills. That means English language teaching materials should incorporate all the four skills of language, or should develop all the four skills like listening, speaking, reading and writing. All these four skills should be incorporated into the materials, or the materials should stimulate or develop or incorporate all these four skills. If materials lack any of these four skills, then those materials are not good materials. Just like if I talk about our country, our culture, we most often actually focus on reading and writing skill. Most of the materials that are used in our country, in our context, actually focus on reading and writing skill. But our materials that are used in primary and secondary level do not incorporate speaking and listening skill. And that's why our students actually are not good enough at speaking and listening, these two skills, because our materials actually are not incorporating or dealing with these two skills, listening and speaking. So materials should be as if those included the four basic skills of language. That means reading, writing, speaking and listening. All these skills should be developed and used in those materials. If it is not so, if materials do not incorporate all the four skills, those materials are not good materials. Then we have to modify the materials. We have to choose such materials that incorporate all those four skills, or four basic skills or macro skills of language. I hope you understand. If any of the skill is somehow eliminated, then the main objective of language teaching and learning will be hampered. So now let us move on to the next principle, that is English language teaching materials should focus on form and function. I repeat, English language teaching materials should focus on form and function both. That means if I talk about a form of a language, sometimes all the forms do not actually incorporate all the functions. Like if I talk about a particular sentence, like a mother is talking to his son, and the mother is ordering the son by saying, "Get out of the house." Just look at the sentence, "Get out of the house." It's actually an assertive sentence, and it is actually a present tense. And in this sentence, you cannot actually recognize the function of the language or the expression. There might be different functions of the same form. Suppose a mother is ordering her son to get out of the house, or might be mother is requesting her son to get out of the house. Suppose a freedom fighter, suppose I am giving you an example, a freedom fighter is looking for shelter at his home, but the enemies are looking for him everywhere, even at his house. So mother is requesting his son to get out of the house. The expression is the same, the form is the same, but you cannot realize the function, whether it is ordering or requesting. Get out of the house. Mother is ordering the son with the same expression, and the other one is requesting, get out of the house, unless you will be caught by the enemies. So get out of the house, the same form has different functions. So you cannot actually recognize the function of the form with the one expression. I mean, one form of a language cannot actually describe all the functions. So all the forms and functions should be included into the materials. That means if we only focus on form, on the form of a language, then definitely we will not be able to recognize the function of it. To realize the function of a language, we have to use it. So unless we use the language, we won't be able to recognize the real function of a language. Whether it is ordering or a request, we cannot recognize it from one function. The example that I have already given you. So from the form, we cannot recognize the function most often. To recognize the function, we have to go for the practical use of language. So materials should not only focus on form, but also focus on function of language. If it fails to do so, those are not effective materials. So another principle for material selection should be English language teaching materials should focus on form and function both. It should not only deal with form, but also it should deal with function of language. That is also very important. Now let us move on with the next principle, that is English language teaching materials should offer opportunities for integrated language use. I repeat, ELT materials, that means English language teaching materials, should create or offer opportunities for integrated language use. So what is that? Integrated language use, what actually we mean by that? Actually, if I talk about reading comprehension and answering question from it, it is actually one kind of material. That there is question, we're using question, we actually gave a reading material to the students are reading the passage or reading the comprehension, and then they're answering from it. So they're doing both reading and writing. So both the skills reading and writing are incorporated in the same material. So this is called integrative language use, integrated use of skills. One skill is incorporated or integrated with another skill in the same material. Just like listening and speaking, if I incorporate these two skills into one material, then that would be the integrated use of language. I hope you understand. Reading comprehension and answering questions, we are doing both in these kinds of materials. We are reading and writing at the same time. So both these two skills are being developed with the same material. So integrated language use opportunities should be there in ELT materials or English language teaching materials. Now let us move on with the next principle. K.M. Asadul Islam Raihan, he actually gave love and like react to the live session. Thank you, Asadul Islam Raihan, for joining. So I encourage you all to join my live session, and it will make my live session more effective and more live and exclusive. So your participation is very important. Now let us move on with the next principle of ELT materials, that is English language teaching materials should be authentic. What is authentic? Authentic materials. What do we mean by authentic materials actually? Well, according to ELT studies, authentic materials means those materials that create opportunities for real world communication. I repeat, authentic materials are those materials that are concerned with real world communication or real world communicative tasks. Just like if we talk about the textbook that is used in our country, English for Today, for primary, secondary level. In those books, we see that there are dialogues that are used in practical life. Suppose Kamal is going to open a bank account, and there are dialogues between the bank manager and the client or the customer. So this is a real world communicative task, real world communication. So this kind of materials are known as real world communicative materials. That means authentic materials that create opportunities for real world communication. Those are known as authentic materials that create opportunities for real world communication. I hope you understand. Now let us move on with the next principle of ELT materials, that is English language teaching materials should be attractive. I repeat, English language teaching materials should be attractive. So what is attractive? I mean, what do you mean by the word attractive? That means materials have to be colorful, have to be attractive, that draw the attention of the learners or the students. Just like colorful textbooks with a lot of pictures, graphs, that will draw the attention of the students or the learners. Even if we use audio-visual materials in the classroom, that will actually engage the students much more intensively. If I can use materials that engage the students much more intensively, those materials are more effective. So to engage the students, we always have to go for the attractive materials, like attractive textbooks that have actually colorful pictures, graphs, or even audio-visual materials. Those KM Asadul Islam Rayhan, he said Mithun, Suma, Ikram, Oder Chinen. No, actually I don't know them. I cannot recognize their name. So anyway, you can tell me about them later on. I cannot actually recognize them at this moment. Mithun, Suma, Ikram, I actually cannot recognize. So anyway, as I was saying, that English language teaching materials should be attractive. Otherwise, those materials will fail to draw the attention of the learners or students, and those materials will not be able to create opportunities for real world communication, or those materials will fail to engage the students inside the language classrooms. I hope you understand. Now let us move on with the next material, next principle of material selection, that is flexibility. That means English language teaching materials should be flexible. What does the word flexible means? Actually, flexible mean that materials have to be user-friendly. That means materials that can be easily brought and used inside the classroom. Like if we suggest textbooks which are very heavy, which are too heavy to carry into the classroom, then those materials should be avoided, because those materials are not flexible. Even audio-visual materials that actually have a very bad sound quality, students sitting at the back bench cannot actually listen to those materials properly. Those are not flexible materials, because those materials lack flexibility. Even there might be materials like textbooks, the printing quality of those materials might not be good. Students find it very difficult to read those texts, or even the font size of those textbooks is very small, so the students find it very difficult to read those texts. Those materials are not flexible. So these kinds of materials should be avoided inside the language classroom or ELT classroom. So flexibility is very important in case of choosing materials or selection of materials. Now let us move on with the next principle of material selection, that is English language teaching materials should be culture sensitive and should not be biased. So what does it mean? English language teaching materials should be culture sensitive and should not be biased. Actually, culture sensitive means we have our own culture to protect, because there might be such materials that can be aggressive towards our culture, which might be threatening to our culture, which might be aggressive to our religion, to our culture to some extent. So those materials should be avoided inside the language classrooms. Or some materials might attack the minority group, or it might uphold the image of majority group or degrade the image of the minority group. These kinds of materials should be avoided inside the classroom. And even culture sensitivity, if I talk about in British Council textbooks, you will find somebody is at a party and drinking wine. There are dialogues of wine, they're having drinks, what kind of drink are you going to take. So these kinds of dialogues are available in foreign textbooks, language textbooks. So if we use those kinds of dialogues in our country, that will be one kind of cultural assault which might threat our culture, because in our culture it is not natural to drink wine, because drinking wine is forbidden in our religion. So in that case, if we use those kinds of material, then it might be culturally biased, it might attack our culture, it might be a cultural assault. So these kinds of materials should be avoided inside the classroom. And even there might be some materials that can actually be aggressive towards women, that can degrade the minority group or women of our country. So those materials should not be used in a language classroom. Materials that somehow degrade our culture, our religion, or our image, or even our country, those materials should be avoided, and we should be very careful in choosing materials. So now let us move on with the next principle that is English language teaching materials should have appropriate instructions. Yes, there are some materials that might mislead, that might be misleading to the learners, because the instructions might not be so clear, because sometimes there might be ambiguous instructions, the questions and the exercises that might not be clear to the students or the learners. So in that case, we have to modify those materials. We have to look for good materials that have clear and appropriate instructions, that do not mislead the students. Suppose there might be questions that might lead to more than one answer. So students might get confused. The instruction is not so clear. The question is not so clear. So in that case, those materials should be avoided that do not have clear or specific or appropriate instruction. Materials should have clear, specific, and appropriate instructions. I hope you understand. So in case of ELT materials, we have to be very much choosy, and we must follow these basic principles that I have already talked about. So choosing ELT materials is a very important task, and teachers have to always try to engage the students with his materials. If materials cannot engage the students, if materials fail to stimulate interaction or communication among the students, if materials are not culture sensitive, if materials do not have clear instructions, if materials do not incorporate the 4 basic skills of language, then those are not good materials. Those materials should be modified, and materials have to be very much effective, so that the learners are properly engaged inside the language classroom, and they must find it interesting. The materials have to be attractive, and materials have to stimulate interaction among the learners and communication among the learners, and materials must incorporate the 4 basic skills of language. Unless, the teaching and learning of language will be hampered. I hope you understand. So that's all for today. I have already finished my discussion on the principles of material selection. Now, in our next live session, I will come back with another new topic for all of you. Till then, it's goodbye from here. And stay good, stay fine, stay healthy, take good care of yourself, and I must assure you that this live session will continue. And if you have any question, any suggestion, or any kind of comment on my live sessions, you can contact me by messaging me through the inbox of this page, or even you can write your comments on the comment section, and even you can call me. I can give you my mobile number. My contact number is 01717295310. So if you face any kind of problem in case of ELT, linguistics, or English language related issues, then you can communicate with me, you can contact me. I am always there for you. I'll try my level best to help you. So thank you very much for attending my live session today, and that's all. Thank you. Goodbye.